Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, me in and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.
In this episode of Ask the Leyland Brothers, we're going to New Zealand. We go across here to Rotorua on the North Island to have a look at New Zealand's famous trout at the Paradise Valley Springs.
And then we're going to Wingham in New South Wales, just here. There we visit a factory where they make horseshoes. I think you'll find that quite interesting. In fact, 85% of the horseshoes used in Australia are made at this factory.
Then we're going across to Pemberton here in Western Australia to have a look at the Kauri timber forests. And we're going to have a look at the timber industry around Pemberton.
We're in the North Island of New Zealand, not far from the township of Rotorua. Apart from its thermal regions, Rotorua is also famous for its trout. We have a letter from John Ewers of Kelmscott in Western Australia. John wrote and said, "I'm originally from New Zealand, though I've lived in Western Australia for most of my life. I've heard of a place in Rotorua, New Zealand, where there are tame rainbow trout. And I was wondering if we could see these trout on Ask the Leyland Brothers." Well, John, there are 2 or 3 places in Rotorua that have tame trout. We're going to have a look at Paradise Valley Springs. The underwater viewing pool is an excellent place to see the size of the trout. Some of the rainbow trout in this pool weigh 10 kilograms. The sight is enough to make your mouth water. The trout in the Paradise Valley Springs are quite safe. They'll never end up on a plate. They will live their lives out here in these idyllic surroundings. The trout in the stream are free to come and go as they please and could end up back in Lake Rotorua on a fisherman's line. Stewart says that even so, the same trout hang around the bridge and feeding spots for years without ever leaving the property. The main attraction for visitors is a large spring pool where the trout are fed by Stuart and John.
Trout in this pool are all rainbow trout. There's approximately 500 in here, and that's a portion of the 10,000 trout on the property. 10,000 is what you would call an educated guess. We can't tell exactly how many there are, but these are captive, these trout, and opposed to the ones in the creek, which are free to come and go. They are wild trout. The pool here is fed by a spring which is called Tiwareka, which is a Maori name for sweet water, and they named this spring Tiwareka years ago when they lived in the valley. There was no European habitation here. Long before the white man came to New Zealand, they lived here. So the spring itself does have some Maori history. These trout, the rainbow trout, will leap for food naturally, but we have over a period of years enticed them to leap for bread, which I'll put on the end of the stick. The process started by teasing them with a little bit of bread and gradually putting the bread on the stick and gradually lifting it higher and higher out of the water until they will jump to probably up to 2 feet.
The rainbow trout have remarkable jumping ability, which is best seen in slow motion. In their haste to be first to get the bread, they sometimes miss, but not very often. Just because you are first to get the bread doesn't mean that you get to keep it. The ducks are quick to snatch the bread from the trout, but the trout are equally quick to snatch it back again. It's not yours until it's swallowed. This watery fish ballet is held every day at Rainbow Valley Springs Trout Park, a tranquil and fascinating place to visit at Rotorua in New Zealand.
Eight-year-old Kelly McMillan from Nambour in Queensland has written to us and says, I would like the Leyland brothers to show us how horseshoes are made and how they're fitted to horses. Well, to answer that request, we've come here to Wingham in New South Wales, and here they have a horseshoe factory.
Black horseshoes are made here in Wingham and are by far the most popular in Australia. The horseshoe begins as a strip of steel, which is cut to a length capable of making 2 shoes. The lengths of steel are then heated so that a stamping machine can press grooves in a set of nail holes into each shoe. The rods are then guillotined in half and the ends are rounded. The operation was started here 10 years ago by an American, Mr. Hyatt, who wanted to make horseshoes using Australian steel. The BHP steel contains about 20% carbon, which is a good pliable steel for the shaping process. The largest part of the 6,000 horseshoes a day made here are exported to America. The dies in the bending machine are changed to suit the various sizes for horses. To complete the shoes, the strips of steel are heated 5 times, and there are 10 different operations required. Prior to sorting and packing, the shoes are inspected for faults. Factory manager Pat Clark has been involved with horses all of his life and became involved with the business about a year ago when Mr. Hyatt moved back to the United States.
We pack these shoes in a box or a container such as this, and we put them in this bag, a plastic bag. We put 2 front shoes, 2 back shoes. They're quite distinct. You can see the difference in the two. Now the front shoe is a round shoe. You can see that. Different to this shoe here, which is a back shoe, which is a long shoe. This range of shoes, these dark shoes back here, are all hack shoes, made for horses that do work all the time around the roads and in the bush. You can see the vast difference between the hack shoe and the trotting shoe. The hack shoe is much heavier, and of course this is the working shoe, the horse that works, you know, all the time, and this is the type of shoe he wears. This shoe here is a trotting shoe, which was used for trotters, just for trotters exclusively. One side's lighter than the other, with the result that it's inclined to throw the horse's feet out to keep them apart, because if they get too close, they're inclined to hit each other, and of course, you know, they can stop a horse very quickly if they kick themselves. Actually, there's 27 different types of horseshoes that can be made by this factory.
How long will the shoe last?
A shoe will last 6 weeks, and well, they last longer in some places. It all depends on where they're being worked. If they're worked out on a hard road, they last only 6 weeks. But if you're working in the paddock all the time, and providing you've got them well nailed on, they last much longer. I'd say about 8 weeks.
The process of making horseshoes may be mechanised and the day of the blacksmith disappearing, but they're still fitted in the same time-honoured way. In fact, wherever it is in Australia, when a packet of horseshoes are opened and fitted like this, the odds are high that they came from the Wingham factory. From the suburban hacks to the outback drover, 85% of horseshoes used in Australia are made at the Clark factory in Wingham.
This is the land of the giants, or big tree country as it's known locally. We're in the southwest corner of Western Australia. We've come here to answer a number of letters we've had asking to see something about the Kauri tree. This one from Paul York of Broadmeadow in New South Wales says, I would like to see the lumberjack at work in the Kauri forest at Pemberton, Western Australia. Also where the logs go after they've been cut. We've also had many other letters asking to see something about the tourist aspects of the Kauri forests. The magnificent Kauri tree is a big tourist drawcard as well as a tremendous source of building timber. Mill towns like Pemberton exist because of the Kauri tree. Most of the town's people work at the sawmill or in industries directly related to timber. In 1912, the town was named after its first settler, Pemberton Walcott. Pemberton is 350 kilometres south of Perth. A short drive from Pemberton brings you to the Brockman National Park. Logging of the forest giants began back in the 1800s. Axes and crosscut saws were used in those days. And when a tree was felled, a saw pit was dug underneath the tree so that the sawers could actually cut it into usable sizes using a saw like this. It would be particularly hard for the man underneath on the other end of the saw. This pit was dug and used by convicts back in 1865. Today, the trees are still felled, but the saw has changed. Logging of the forest is strictly controlled by officers of the Forest Department. They select the trees to be felled by the logging company and are on the site to inspect and measure felled trees. From this they assess the royalty payments the timber company pays the Forest Department. Once the forest giants are felled, they are trucked to the Pemberton sawmill. Pemberton sawmill is the largest in Western Australia and has been in operation since 1913. The logs are drawn from surrounding state forests in special permit areas that have been selected to provide long-term life to the milling industry and the forests. The huge logs travel along a conveyor belt to the giant band saws that will reduce it to workable sized timber. Kauri produces an exceptionally hard and strong timber, which is particularly useful in heavy structural beams. Kauri is a member of the eucalyptus family. In 1928, the World Forestry Commission judged Pemberton Kauri timber as second only to Californian redwood. The mill produces about 140 cubic metres of sawn Kauri timber each day. When a Kauri forest is cut down, a selection of superior seed trees is left scattered throughout the area. These are left so that they can drop their seeds and produce a new Kauri forest. This also produces a much better Kauri forest than the original because none of the rubbish trees grow and a pure stand of Kauri is developed. This area here was logged in 1972, and these trees that are growing are the result of those superior trees. It will be 100 years before the reforestation looks like this Kauri forest. It's hard to believe that this area here was once a small wheat farm. It was abandoned in about 1872. And in 1875, a bushfire swept through the area and the surrounding Kauri trees seeded. And this is the result 100 years later. This is known as the 100-year forest. It's a beautiful place to visit and just walk around and enjoy the bird life and cool, fresh forest air. 100 years is a relatively short period in forestry terms, so this area is a prime demonstration of the productivity and natural regenerative powers of the Kauri forest. High rainfall is necessary to produce such lush and rapid forest growth, but even in the rain, the forest is beautiful. The high rainfall also produces other natural scenic spots. One of the best known is the Cascades, 5 kilometres from Pemberton. The Froy Brook spills over a massive granite bar, creating a shallow waterfall. This larger fall is on the Beedelup Brook in the Beedelup National Park. This disfiguration of a beautiful tree is an example of early attempts at creating some sort of tourist attraction. Mrs. Doris Stewart of Glen Huntly in Victoria would like to see the Gloucester tree. Well, the Gloucester tree is actually a fire lookout tower. It's 300 years old and it's 60 metres to the top, which means about 200 feet in the old scale. So we're going to have a look at the tree and see if we can climb it for you, Mrs. Stewart. Climbing the Gloucester tree is entirely at your own risk. as the sign at the bottom of the tree points out. Don't try climbing the tree if you are at all frightened of heights. All I could think of was that I would not like to have been the man who knocked the spikes in during the tower's construction. Fire lookout towers were built in living trees because they were the easiest way to get a tower high enough to see over the forests. There are few hills in the forest areas. Well, Mr. Stewart, we've made it to the top. It's a long way down, that 200 feet to the bottom. It's supposed to be the tallest lookout tower in Australia. They're being phased out of use now and aircraft are taking over, but it's still here for people to climb up to just to have a look around. What a view it is too. Once at the top, it is easy to see how the fire spotters could notice a fire starting in any direction. Well, Mr. Stewart, it certainly looks a long way down from up here. 60 metres up a tree is the highest I've ever been up a tree. And this is where we're going to finish our story on the Kauri forest. This tree was named after the Duke of Gloucester, who climbed it soon after the lookout was constructed. He praised the courage of the men who built the highest fire lookout in a tree in the world.
Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers.